visited the Brighton Tattoo Museum and spoke with Fade Meraki about her documentary The Eternal Clothing, a journey to Siberut Island's jungle in West Sumatra, where she meets tattooed Metawai, crossing ocean and jungles, learn Bahasa Indonesian, immersing herself in tribal tradition, and also crafting tools and ink, getting tattooed and reunited with tribal kin.
So in February 2023, I travelled to West Sumatra to reunite with a group of indigenous shaman that I know who live really remotely in the jungle. They live a totally original lifestyle. So they were actually colonised in 1970 by Indonesia, and before that they were kind of just left to themselves. So their cultures remained really strong, really original, and they live in wooden umas in the jungle and have like no gas, no electric, just cook with fire. They don't even have cotton clothing there. They use bark pulp and they make it into a fibre and then tie it around their waist and it's dyed red. And they actually have a full bodysuit of tattoos that they call their eternal clothing. And they believe that it makes a person immortal. And what this signifies is things that are of special importance to them. And there's differences with each gender, with what tattoos they wear. And these are really the mark of the shaman. It's part of their cultural identity. So I travelled back into the jungle. I had to fly all the way to Kuala Lumpur, then West Sumatra, and then take a 7-hour ferry to a remote island with zero tourist infrastructure. Like, you can't even order a cup of coffee there. And I actually learned to speak in Bahasa for 6 months before travelling there, so that I had a language to bridge from the local language into. Like, they speak their own tribal language on that island that's actually just oral, it's not written at all. So I had to do this to be able to basically translate the interviews I was taking afterwards, to be able to subtitle them for the documentary I've made. So I did that because I wanted to document their ancient tattoo practices that date back millennia. So they are proto-Malay people, which means they are the original Aboriginal people of these islands. And their tattoo culture dates back millennia. So these are like rituals and traditions in their heritage that have been passed down from one generation to the next.
You basically travel back in time by going to this place, didn't you?
It really felt like travelling back in time, yeah. It was like I've never even seen somewhere like this in a movie. Living a totally original lifestyle felt great as well. It feels really authentic. I think that our lifestyle in the West is really like based around capitalism, and people are quite disconnected from one another and from nature. But there it's very like family orientated, and everything comes from nature and everything's used and reused, and yeah, it's just wonderful. It felt really authentic and relaxing to be in the jungle and living with the tribe.
Let's talk about the documentary, how that came out.
So I was really fortunate to be able to interview the indigenous shaman that live in these remote wooden umas in the jungle. So I trekked in just with my backpack, a Canon 800D and a radio mic, and filmed everything myself and did all the subtitling as well. And I managed to capture interviews about their tattoo culture, their history, their family traditions, and why they believe that these tattoos make them immortal. And I've edited that into a 25-minute documentary, which really explores the tattoo culture and traditions there. And I feel it's of great importance to document this because they've faced a lot of oppression. So they're at risk of losing these tattoo traditions if it's not continued, and if it's not documented, then people don't know even why they have the tattoos.
What's the documentary called and when it's going to be released?
It's called The Eternal Clothing. I'm going to release the film The Eternal Clothing on the 1st of September. People often ask how I ended up in the jungle, you know, on my own with a rucksack in an area where it's actually illegal for women to even travel alone. They have the highest Muslim population in the world in West Sumatra, so they do have their own laws. And being female and being alone is actually illegal, so I get a lot of questions about why I'm there. So how this happened. So more than 10 years ago, I made a documentary in Borneo with my friend's tribe, the Iban tribe of Sarawak. And this was a documentary about tattoo culture and traditions. And through my friends in Borneo, I actually met the tribe in West Sumatra. So it's a totally different landmass, totally different country. But I was given the contact of a guide there that could take me into the jungle. And I actually volunteered to go there with a friend, and we crowdfunded to get them solar panels, because they have no power or anything like that there. There's no electricity, no gas to cook on. And so for lighting in the evenings, they were burning like oil in oil lamps. I'll do that bit again. So for lighting in the evening, they had oil lamps, and they're burning fuel inside, like petrol or oil. And they have to buy this from mainland Indonesia. So obviously this is quite dangerous. If you're living in an old wooden house, there's fire risks, and it's not particularly green. And also it means that they're reliant on buying these items from mainland Indonesia, and they really want to be quite independent from mainland Indonesia. My friend Steph Sen, who's the organiser of the Strasbourg Tattoo Convention, had actually organised a crowdfunding campaign to raise money for the solar panels. So I helped him with that, and I volunteered to trek into the jungle with him and help distribute these with our new contact, the guide that we were given in West Sumatra. So I trekked into the jungle with my friend Steph. We had 16 kits of solar panels and solar lamps to distribute, and we wanted to give those to the people that live the most remote, the poorest shaman that, you know, they live in the jungle with not much really. So our guide thought it was of great importance to go trek as far as we could and find the people that really needed them, as opposed to the people that perhaps live by the port and have a few modern things already. So it was really hard work. We had to cover a lot of miles, and you have to trek through like jungle with no path. You have to just cut through it with a knife. I had to trek through swamps, like wading in mud up to past my knees. It was actually quite dangerous. There's like every dangerous animal you could think of in that jungle, all of the snakes, all of the spiders. They have pythons so big they can eat a 12-year-old boy. So I only read about that after I left, because I didn't want to be scared when I was there. And I'm really pleased that I didn't know that before trekking into the jungle, because you have to go barefoot through the swamps. If you're wearing like a hiking boot or something, it's going to get stuck in the mud and you can't really pull your leg out. And they also become, you know, really filthy as well. So it's easier to go without shoes, and then when you get to a bit of fresh river, you can just wash the mud off. So I've been through all sorts to be able to get to these people and experience living in remote wooden umas. So the first time I went was before the pandemic. It was about 4 or 5 years ago now. And I just fell in love with the place and the warmth of the people. I think the further you get from the cities, the warmer people are, the more accepting they are. You know, you've come all that way, they just want to like invite you in and sit you down and get to know you and offer you tea or something like that. So I just really connected with the warmth of people's hearts and the relationship with nature there. I think because I grew up rural, I really appreciate, you know, being in the jungle. I love being surrounded by all the bird noises and animal sounds, and I'm really okay with camping. I love it.
How long have you been there, and will you go back?
So I was there for 2 weeks the first time, and I was there for 2 weeks to make the film, which is actually really challenging because you have to carry every food and drink item you will need. There's no clean water, there's nowhere to buy food, and in that heat things can perish quite quickly. So you have to get used to eating plain rice for every meal. So I actually lost like 5 kilos when I was there. So after 2 weeks I was quite pleased to get to mainland and be able to get a cup of coffee and, you know, order some food. I actually went for a big buffet meal when I got back because I was the thinnest I'd ever been. But yeah, I would like to go back again and go even further. So I've met another guide that can take me more north. In the south, the tribes have been contacted already. In the north, there's tribes that don't even want to be contacted by other tribes. But in the middle village, there's an area that's really authentic, and I know someone who's from that village, so he can take me. So I'd like to go there and meet more of the indigenous shaman, be able to record more of their stories. And I'm working on learning Bahasa still, and I'd like to learn the local language as well, just to be able to understand more and ask more in-depth questions. So whilst I was in the jungle with the indigenous shaman, I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to make a plant-based tattoo kit and plant-based ink with the tattooist from that village. So this ritual has been passed down through many generations, and he's now the tattooist for his family. He learnt from his father, and his father was actually sick when I was there. His father's name is Aman Laulau, and he's the chief of the whole village. He's like the grandfather of the tribe, and he's always been so lovely to me. He's always been really welcoming. He likes to walk me around the village on his arm and get me to meet everyone. And I was able to attend his healing ceremony whilst I was there. So he had lost his mobility and a lot of his health in the 4 years where I hadn't seen him. So I was really fortunate to be able to spend time with him and attend his healing ceremony, which involved sacrifice of a pig. It involved a lot of dancing and drumming. It actually goes all night. There's different rounds of dancing and ritual, and I was just really lucky to be able to observe that and be part of it. But then the next day, his son, the tattooist, agreed to make a tattoo kit with me and to tattoo me, but we only had a limited amount of time because he needed to be making medicine for his father. So we went into the jungle together and we cut down some pieces of wood and carved them into tattoo sticks. So you have one that the needle ties to and one that you tap the back of it with, a bit like riding a snare on a drum. That's probably the closest comparison we have in the West. And I took a bunch of needles with me and we made ink from ash. We actually burnt kerosene and collected the black smoke, like the soot, in a coconut shell, scraped it out with a leaf and then mixed it with sugarcane water to form like a black paste. And he tattooed 3 little dots on my arm that are added to the jungle foliage I already have a tattoo of. So this is a really rare, unique opportunity, and I've been fortunate to be able to document that process as well. This year I've screened my documentary at the Great North Museum in Newcastle when I was lecturing there. I've screened it in Alexandra Palace and also in America on 4th of July weekend. But if people want to see it, I'm going to release it online to make it super accessible to anyone. And if anyone wants to talk to me about that, I'll be at Brighton Tattoo Museum.
This is Will Ranieri for Latest TV News.